go live. Going live? What is this? I don't understand what this means. You are live. I don't believe you, YouTube. Fine. Whatever. I'm live now, apparently. Okay. Is it working? Yes, it is. Neat. All right, cool. Now I'm going to share the link with my team. All right. HSDS onEnterPress to HSDS React input. Neat. All right, let's do this. So, hello, folks who might be tuning in, which probably no one. That's fine. The reason why I do these live streams is because I get to share knowledge primarily with my team, but anyone else who's interested while I do my work. And it's fun for me. And I think the impact of this is much greater than if I were to do it by myself and try to explain it with like text in a pull request description or something. So the goal that we have today, oh my goodness, this is new for me. I have not switched on to different camera things. All right, cool. So I've just been talking with my title screen on. All right, so the goal for us today is to enhance HSDS React, which is our component library, with a new property on the input component, allowing the consuming user to tap into anytime you press enter on the input to do something like that. That's very useful because in case you want to intercept an EnterPress to perform an action, usually to submit something, but you don't necessarily want to rely on the default HTML form submit callback. You want to tap into the EnterPress of an input, you can do that. So we're going to do that. We're going to update the storybook that contains the input. The storybook is a UI development environment where we do all the things, all the development for HSDS React, also the testing as well. So we'll include onEnterPress so that we can showcase that it's working. We'll update the actual tests for onEnterPress, for the input on EnterPress with Ingest, and I will create a brand new PR and I'll show you the tooling and the stuff that I do to do it. So let's get started. First thing, we're gonna create a new branch on HSDS React. I'm just gonna call it just new branch input add on EnterPress. We don't really have a convention for how we really name these branches. I think it's fine. It doesn't really matter. Not a big deal. So now I'm going to start the dev environment. So this is a very interesting error that you see. So when I did npm start here, my shell could not find npm, and the reason for that is very interesting. So while this fires up, I'll talk about it. We use a very specific version of Node for our development things, version 8.11.4. And in order for us to have control over that, we would use some sort of version manager. Personally, I use NVM. And NVM notoriously has a really, really slow startup time. So I've customized my shell to fire up NVM asynchronously when it first starts up. So it doesn't block the loading of my shell, but there might be a chance that Node and npm might not be available in the first few microseconds, which is fine. Great, so this is the storybook environment where we're going to be doing our development. Here is my input. Here it is. So what you're seeing at the bottom right here, this is the guy that I'm going to be enhancing, knobs. And knobs is a very handy, knobs is an action logger. So knobs is a very handy thing in Storybook that allows the user to manipulate the behavior of the component directly within this UI dev environment. So if I pull up one that has knobs set up, it's a funny name, I know. Stepper, I think, is one. Yeah. So here I can manipulate Stepper by changing the current index from 0 to 1, and then you can see the component live update right before your eyes, which is really fun. It's really great for QA and design or anyone else, because they can just hop in and check to see if the component behavior is what you would expect. But it's also great for development as well, because now I don't need to mock certain properties in order to test it out, I can just do it live in the browser. So I am going to be enhancing the storybook of input to include a callback for onEnterPress, so I can see it anytime I press enter in this action logger thing. All right, so what do we got to do? So HSDS React, it is a TypeScript project / JavaScript project. So originally it was developed in JavaScript. I created it over a year and a half ago, and many months ago, I thought typing was a really cool thing. So I introduced Flow into the project, which is the type language, I suppose, superset or whatever that Facebook has created. But then later on, I opted to use TypeScript instead because I felt like it was a lot better. So we have the input component right here. We have some things going on. It's not too terribly important right now, but this is a Flow.js based component. Whereas if I were to take a look at key press listener, you can see that it's a TypeScript file. The dev environment for HSDS React and also its compiler knows how to handle both cases, which is fine. Ideally, we would refactor everything to use one, but we're going to do this over time. For now, I'm not going to refactor this to TypeScript just because it'll take too long, just for this little enhancement. But if I were to do any work that's a little bit more in depth, I probably would refactor it to TypeScript because I'm just going to be touching a bunch of code lines anyway. So here we go. I'm just double checking the chat. Yeah, no one's watching. It's fine. No. I'm just going to share this onto... What happens if I share... Sorry, I'm just looking at Guild.js. There we go. Checking out my... Yeah, checking out my Slack. Okay. Alrighty. So here we see a bunch of flow types. We're going to add a new one. On key down, on enter press, which is a good one. And now I get to define what it is I'm going to send back. I mean, I don't have the flow bin running, so it's not going to actually do any type checking, which is fine. I don't want it to be running because it actually kills your CPU while doing this stuff, so it's fine. Event. Any input event. What is that? Any. Great. Thanks, past me. Oh, no. There are some things here. It's just Flow or TypeScript can't. Sorry, it's just VS Code doesn't recognize this stuff because it's not TypeScript. It's fine. On any input, sure. So what do we want to do? We want to intercept a key press on key down. Oh. This is interesting. So HTML elements or inputs are a really good example. There's actually more than one type of key press. There's key down, there's key up, and there's key press. Key down is when the user presses the key and it actuates down. That's when it fires. Key up is when it actuates up, and key press is after you've performed that motion. I think it'll... Oh, man. So there's different ways to go about this. This is how I'm strategizing this right now. We can do on key down. Sorry, on enter press, which might assume that. But sometimes, depending on how you set up your events, sometimes you listen on things on key down, sometimes you listen on things on key up. I think it's probably good to provide the user with varying levels of hooks to tap into. So, I mean, we can do on enter down, on enter up, and on enter press. So this is one strategy we can do. We can create 3 callbacks. Sorry, I'm vimming right now, so I'm typing random letters. So we can create 3 callbacks for this component, and that's what we get. Or we can do something like this. On enter, where we provide the user with the type and then the event. Type is like, type would be down, up, or press, and event would be the event, the native event that the DOM component provides us after we press enter. So I kind of like this particular implementation because it's cleaner. It's a singular function. However, it is slightly more work on the user to be able to have to do that, I think. This is more implicit, but there's more functions. So over time, I mean, I think it's fine. Having this is fine, it's simpler. Over time, if we happen to require additional APIs for specific key presses, like control or command or space or whatever, then we'll consolidate it then. Or maybe it's up to the user to figure it out, and enter is the only special case when we add this particular API. That's fine with me too. Great. So now, with that brief kind of like talking to myself point, we're going to add a couple of extra ones. On, enter, down, on, enter, up. Those are important. Whoop. Sorry, just got a message from a coworker. His name's Ryan. Lovely fellow. Here we go. On, enter, down, on, enter, press, on, enter, up. So we now need those three. Great. So now we have to tap into the actual input for those callbacks. So I'll go over what this giant list of destructured variables are in a second. Let me alphabetize this. Oh, okay. I'm gonna do the whole thing. It's fine. It is fine. Fun fact, alphabetizing things isn't just good for readability, because, I mean, just finding things based on where it is on the alphabet, it's just simpler. However, if your code base is alphabetized throughout, I believe it actually helps with G-shipping. I read that somewhere on the internet. So I'm going to alphabetize all this because I'm just touching it anyways. This is fine. Great. On key down, handle on key down. So these are the actual props that are going to be passed down to the component, base field component, base field component, which is these two. These are styled components. So what this is multiline. Multiline is a specific property that we provide to the input that transforms it between an input and a text area. So depending on if the user has defined multiline, the type of component, type of HTML DOM node that it renders is different. So that's why we have to do this little consolidation process. And here, this is the thing that we actually pass into the input. So we need to tap into on key press, this handle on key. Dang it, on key press. Fine, on key press and on key down, up. That's the other one. All right. Alphabetize, alphabetize. Great. So now I actually have to create the, oh yeah, before I jump there, I'm going to explain all this. So, the reason why we're plucking all these things out and then using the rest spread, even though we might not be using these particular variables inside of the render method, is rest spreading is a very, very important concept within HSDS React. This was a feature that was added since the very beginning. And the purpose of this, and it's a pattern, I didn't invent it, but it's something that I advocate for. It's a pattern that allows the consuming user to be able to pass whatever properties they want into the input. And the behavior of this is that it should work like a default HTML element. So you should be able to pass data whatever into the input because this is a valid HTML attribute. You should be able to do that. So the rest spread guarantees that you have that ability and that freedom. However, it's a little bit more work to be able to set that up at the base component level. And over time, I came up with a way to kind of make that process a little bit safer, and that is this get valid props function that basically filters out non-React / HTML safe attributes that eventually make their way into the base HTML component when it compiles and renders. And this is a function that comes from React Utils, which is another library that I built that handles a lot of React things for us, and we never have to think about it again, which is great. Great. So we plucked out the onEnterPress stuff. We created new callbacks on key down, on key press, on key up that get passed to the eventual input or text area. So now we have to actually write those things. Handle on key down, right handle on key up, which we get an event, and none of this is valid typing, but that's fine. I'm just going to copy it. So my rationale for doing this typing stuff inside of Flow that's not actually being type checked at all is because when I do transform, or when any of us transforms this to TypeScript, the types will be there to make that refactoring a little bit easier. All right, so, right, what do I need to do? I need to do handle on onEnterPress, handle on onEnterPress, and then we need to fire native on key events. So this is really important as well. Because we have intercepted the native on onEnterPress and on key up callbacks from the input / text area, we need to pass through those callbacks so that when the consuming user does decide to use on, I don't know, on key up, that callback doesn't get blocked. That's really important. You don't want your component to swallow things that native React should be able to handle, native callbacks especially. So if you tap into anything like on blur, on focus, or whatever, be sure to pass through that original property so that the user can, so it doesn't affect the user when they use it. Key up, key press. And because I defined it there, yeah, why not? Why not? On key up, on key press. Great, 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 great. I am just going to check the live stream right now to see if it's even working. Yeah, I think it's working. Fine. Whatever. Oh, wait. Is there audio? I'm just checking the audio. My audio source is coming out of something else. Oh, that's why it's coming. It's not coming from. Okay, there you go. Okay, live stream's working. It's great. I think the more often I do these live stream things, the more streamlined it'll be. So I apologize. It's just my third time doing this, coding live stream stuff. Great. So now we have our on handle thingies. So the very bare minimum we need to do on this props on key up, pass the event through. Now that's safe. On key enter, pass that event through. Now that's safe. Great. Now we have to handle that very special case of on enter. And how you do this is you basically type check the key code of the event key code, and then you just basically check if this is an enter. So I've done something here. We've done something here where we do check to see if it's enter. Keys, this is a special object that outputs, that maps all the numbers, which are the key code numbers, to a name that's more easily recognizable. This was something I added in the very beginning, and it's something that I stole from Shopify's Polaris. Stole, borrowed, open source, it's fine. From Polaris because it's a fantastic React component library. They did a fantastic job, so I borrowed that idea. And it's been working great. Because, I mean, I can only remember a handful of key codes enter is like 13, and then I kind of forget the rest. So having something like this makes it a little bit easier. And FYI, this particular constants file, this key.js, and everything else inside of HSDS is exported when the library compiles. So when you go to consume this library, you have access to keys.js as well for you to do key code checking if you need to. So if enter code equals keys enter, then we do this props on enter up event. We pass the event through, and it's just very simple now. We just do this. Okay, and at this very point, if so, here, so yeah, same thing. I'm just gonna do it here. So I hesitated a little bit because I was like, should I put the callback here since this kind of check already exists? But I don't think so because it does like another thing in here. We don't want to muck this thing up. It should just be natively it should just fire every single time you press enter. On enter down. So passing the event through, it's a minor detail, but it's a very, very important one because you want the user to be able to tap into things like if shift has been pressed, if control has been pressed, or whatever. That is available in the native event object. And the other things that are available is the ability to stop propagation and to prevent default. So the user has finer grained control of behavior whenever this action fires. You want to be able to expose that. You don't want to block any of that kind of stuff. Great. So now we have that set up for the 3 callback properties. I believe it works. Let's test that on Storybook. Stories, input, that guy. Okay, this is the thing. I always forget how to do this. Every single time. Stepper. This is it. No, I don't need knobs. I need action. Yeah. That's what I do. I just check another file to see what the specific import is because we need this like actions callback from Storybook's add-on actions. I always forget how I'm supposed to import it. So here we go. So default is the default story. This is way back when I created stories that were lowercase for reasons, I don't know. Now I'm just going to rename them to uppercase because it's a little bit nicer. Props. I can't type. So, we'll do on enter down is action on enter down. So this is really neat. This taps into the, where is it? Where is it? Is this? No. Here. This taps into the action logger, so we'll be able to see the things that we're doing. On enter up, on enter press. And now we just spread the props into the input like so, and this should recompile, things should not break. Great. So if I type, nothing happens. If I press enter, we see down, but up is not firing. What? Why? On enter up, why? Handle on key up. Oh, it's because this is all wrong. Handle on key up. Handle on key press. This is probably wrong too. Handle on key down, handle on key up, and on key, oh, this is totally wrong. Handle on key press. Great. Now, after that very embarrassing typo, we can try it again. Down, okay, up, and press did not work. Oh, that's because this happened. On enter press. Jeez. It's early. It's not. I started this live stream before 9. I just had my first cup of coffee. I haven't even finished it yet. Anyway, let's try it. I'm going to refresh. So I see up, down. I don't see press. onEnterPress, onEnter. Oh, jeez. onEnterPress. Honestly, I make way less mistakes when I use Vim. I mean, you can use whatever code editor you want. It doesn't matter. But for me, when I use Vim, I feel like I have to pay attention more, especially because I'm a nutso person who doesn't use syntax highlighting when I use Vim. You know what? No. I'm going to keep syntax highlighting because it's easier to follow in the live stream, but if I were to be coding just for myself, I turn all that stuff off. onEnterPress. Okay, I'm just going to log something here. I am one of those folks who don't use debuggers unless I absolutely have to. I prefer console logs. So something is happening. Key enter is not a function. Of course it's not. That's something I made up. Jeez. On key press. Right. Alright. So I see we firing, but I don't see the callback firing. This props onEnterPress. onEnterPress is being passed through the props, okay. Oh! Interesting. I remember now. So we don't actually need onKeyPress. Silly me. So we can't do this because, geez, I remember now. If you check out the console log event key code, key press doesn't actually give you a key code. It just logs when you pressed a key. So if you check out the log right here, you see 0, even regardless of what key I'm typing. So I guess we don't need to handle the press case because it's just you can't tap into it. That's fine. onEnterPress. So that's fun. We just need 2. And this makes me feel a little bit better. The API is a little bit simpler, and you still get the up-down fine-grained control. Key press. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes all the time. This is just one of them here, when I realize the intent and the spirit is good, but the execution, I made a little boo-boo. Okay. Great. So now we have those 2, which is good. So now we can see the up-down happening. Probably, yeah, on key down, action, on key down, on key up. Great. So now if we check out the logs within action logger, if I type a single letter, like the letter A, you should see a down up. And you should, there we go. And you receive the original event object, original event object here. So if I type in enter, you can see on enter up and on enter down are right there. And you get the original event object like so. So now if I clear this and I press on shift enter, should be this one. You should see that there is a shift modifier somewhere along with the enter. Somewhere. Shift key false? That's interesting. Oh no, maybe I didn't intercept it in time. Shift key false. What the heck? Which 13? 90. Let me try this again. I don't believe this. Key downs, you should be able to intercept and see modifier keys. Shift, Control, Alt, and Command, which I believe is meta inside of JavaScript. So if I hold Command and I press Enter, oh, wait a second. We did something funky when we're doing the key down thing within the input, I remember. Shift key, all right. So we see it for key up. I think this is fine. Let me just double check something. So inside the handle on key down, we do this thing here, carriage return something, but we fired it before we're doing this logic, so it should be fine. I'm just gonna chalk it up to Storybook not being able to handle things just because there's too many key events firing. I think it's fine. So we'll find that out during the testing. So we have our tests here, and now we're gonna write some tests. Man, there are so many tests. The trick is figuring out where to even put the test to begin with. So for this particular thing, just because it's completely separate, I'm going to create its own little describe block. Describe on enter down. Now we can test for enter down. I'm going to pull up my guy here. And then we can see testing, the test runner happened while we write the test. So here's a fun little trick. Dev is a command I've set up inside of HSDS React to fire jest in watch mode. So if you pass in an extra argument of a specific of something, like input, it does a file match so that it only runs tests on files that match against input, which is great because now the amount of files that it's looking for is greatly reduced, because inside of HSDS we have so many files. There's over 3,000 tests inside of HSDS React. So, you know, making the test runner do less work on initial load is great. I always forget how to do this. Pause, quit. Man, so this problem that you're seeing here, this is probably something you've experienced before, where you're telling just to do something, but it doesn't, and then it kind of does it afterwards. So now you see this like mismatch, like combination of weird things going on in the logs. This is because jest runs in parallel by default. You can adjust it by doing this trick where you do jest run in band. That forces it the parallelism to not run, and it runs in a single band. However, what I found out was after you do this, it runs singularly on the first run. Subsequent runs go back to that weird parallel thing, and all your logs and stuff get swallowed up and things are bad. I believe the Jest team have fixed this inside of version 24, which is the latest version, but most of us are on 23, including Create React App and other Facebook things as well. So yeah, we're gonna have to deal with this pain for a bit. Dang it. Okay, what am I looking for? I'm looking for input specifically. Input. Oh, the logs are so messed up. Input.test.js. You see there's like 3 things going on. That's because there's parallelism. It's so hard for me to tell. All right, is that the one I need? Sure. Yeah, that's the one I need. That type ahead feature, by the way, that you're seeing it was part of Jest at one point. I believe it was supported in Jest version 20 and maybe 21, but the team removed it, and now it's available as a separate Jest plugin or add-on. I'm not sure what that term is called. Just look up Jest Watch, and you should be able to see it. It's a very, very handy feature. I missed it dearly when the Jest team removed it. That's why I added it back in. It's a very simple thing to add in, and should save you a bunch of time. And that has been built into this project as well as the other ones that I've worked on. Test, great. Fires on enter down. Fires on enter down when enter key is pressed down. So there's several tests that we can run. First, I need to mount the input. We have the mount. We have our spy, Okay, we have our SPI right there. On enter down calls the SPI. And now we're going to find the input. I use L as my go-to variable name just because it's simpler. It's the simplest thing to do. And usually for the test I write anyway, you only ever really target one single element. And I just find that having a consistent name is just it's faster to write these tests, and the clarity remains the same. So for me, I know some folks, if you're testing out a certain thing and you need to find an input component, or sorry, an input DOM element, you might do like input, which is fine. But then for this low-level component test, where your component is also named input, I feel like this actually works against you. This is a little bit less clear for me, whereas L, I feel like it's a little bit clearer. So L, we need to do the wrapper, find an input node. So the first thing I do is like, I test within Enzyme, can you even find this stupid input? Because as you do a lot more complex React things, especially if you have higher order components that wrap things, finding elements within Jest is no longer very straightforward. So here, this is the problem I was talking about, where things run in parallel. Excuse me, I need coffee. Right. So when things run in parallel, and Jest is swallowing up the log. So I really should be seeing something when Jest spits this out, but it's not, because this particular run thing is swallowing it up. So my only workaround that I found to be helpful is to make the logs big enough so that Jest doesn't swallow it up. It's a dumb workaround, but it's one that we have to do, I guess, until we migrate over to Jest 24, which I believe the team said that they fixed. So we'll see. Right. So now you see this gigantic log because I forced it to log something. Right. So it should be there. It should be there. I trust that it's there. I'm just going to make it up. So now on the L, we can simulate a key press or a key down. But we have to pass it a very specific key code. The key code is 13, and that's what it's looking for. So now we expect the SPI to have been called. And that is a test. Very simple test. We'll write more, but this is the first test we'll write. Great, it passes. So now, I want to test modifier keys. This is important as well. Can fire a key down? This is one. So right now I am debating something in my head. There are 4 modifier keys that we can test for. So does that mean I write the test 4 times? Or I do something clever where I create some sort of thing that makes it loop 4 times, and then it'll run the test by itself. I don't know. I think this is fine. It keeps it simple. Shift key is true. This should still pass. It is fine. Control, I believe that's the one. I could be wrong. C, control key. Yeah. I think that this should be automated. There is like a jest for each somewhere that you can tap into, I believe. Somewhere you can do a loop inside of jest. Each? Describe each. Oh man, ugh. This is one of those things where you're like writing code that writes code. It's fine. I'm not dealing with that. It's fine. What's another thing I have to test? I have to test if it doesn't swallow on key press. On key down, still fires on when enter key is pressed. So now I'm going to set in two SPIs. So we have an enter SPI, and then we have a key down SPI. Enter SPI on key down. I'm giggling. Alright, it's so dumb. So I'm calling it SPI because I'm being silly. It's like a random thing I saw from a YouTube video way back where the guy pronounced spy as SPI, and that's how I've been calling spies ever since. So we have two SPIs, an enter SPI and a down SPI. Both of them should be called. Run. And I'm sure that live streaming this thing is taxing my computer, so it's fine. Okay, that's a test. That's basically what we need. So now we're going to do onEnterUp, and all we're going to do is replace. Oh no! Got too zealous, overzealous. Let's see. We only want to target this guy. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. onEnterUp. So now we're going to target on key downs. All the word downs, I guess. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Crap, it's fine. Up. Up. Okay. No, overzealous again. Jeez. Need to replace key down SPI. Key up SPI. I think I messed up somewhere. Okay, yeah. Forgot to add that here. I know I did a bad job. Jeez. What? onEnterSPI. On key up still fires. Oh, that's why. Up. Jeez. Key up. That explains why things aren't working, because I haven't set that up correctly. All right. Run again, and this should cover our use cases for enter, key up and down. Right. And now I'm going to unblock the rest of the test. Only is a very, very handy little thing within the Jest API. You can isolate certain bits of the test so that everything else skips, so it only runs that particular chunk. You can also isolate individual tests. So in addition to doing describe only, you can also do test only, which is very handy. So now I can see that everything passes, and also on enter down and on enter up passes. Here's the next thing that I like to do. The test coverage score for HSDS React is 100%. It's been 100% since over a year and a half. So after I first created it, 1 month later, the test coverage, I believe, got up to 100% and has been there ever since. So we have to maintain that score. Here's what you can do. You could do an Npm Run Test, which basically runs Jest along with the coverage flag. But what that does is that it runs through your entire test suite to get the coverage, which is fine if you're working on a smaller code base, but this is quite large, and I think it takes like 6 minutes to run through the entire thing. I don't got time for that. So similar to the trick I did earlier, where I did npm run dev -- input, I can do that for test as well. And it'll run the coverage, but only on input files. I know it's gonna fail because the test coverage is 100%, but I only care about test coverage for inputs right now, and I want to see if everything I wrote can cover those use cases. Yeah, so this is quite fast, less than a minute. It's gonna complain, and then it's gonna spit out my test coverage file. Eventually. Oh, come on. Okay, normally it honestly never takes this long. It's just probably because my computer is on fire right now. The fans are spinning. All right. So the test files, those of you who haven't seen them before, just generates test coverage HTML for you that you can take a look at and see. It is rendered at coverage, lcov report, and this index HTML. So you can open it in Finder and browse it through there. However, inside of HSDS React, I've added some handy dandy open commands inside of the scripts. So if you do npm run open cov or open coverage, it automatically does that for you. So npm run open cov, very handy. Now it's going to open up the covered HTML. Everything's on fire. That's fine. I know that. I just care about the inputs. Input. So input says 100. No. So there are certain things inside of my input tests that don't cover everything, which is fine. So for this, for example, this backdrop thing, I'll do a deep dive into how inputs work, but this is one of them where the radio use case is not tested. That's because when the input renders as a radio, that's where that gets tested. So this is fine for me to see. What I'm trying to spot out is the new onEnterDown and onEnterUp commands to see if they've been tested correctly. onEnterUp, else. What happens on else? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So this is a test I didn't fire. So, geez, thanks, Jess. This was very helpful. So the use case I didn't test for is like, what happens if you press a key that's not enter? Therefore, the callback should not fire. Sometimes this test coverage stuff is useful. No, often it is. But there are cases where you've done a test for a thing and then it just doesn't pick up for reasons. I've experienced that. It's rare, but it happens. Or the case just like can never really happen. Or just can't pick it up because enzyme/JS DOM can't test it properly. That happens often. Anyway, test onEnterDown does not fire when a non-enter key is pressed down. So now let's do, I don't know, 40. That's something. All right. So we have key down sp to have called, key enter sp not to have been called. And we'll do the same for up. On key up does not fire when a non-enter, okay, down. We have up, not dup, we have up. On key on enter, oh, I gotta replace all these downs. Down, 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 key up sp, enter on enter up, enter sp, we have that on key up, nope, key up, right. So now everything should pass. We've covered the test cases where when we press a key that's not entered, my test fail. Why? Interesting. Oh, that's because I didn't update that. Right. Okay, so with this, our test should pass. I've covered the use cases for enter, up and down, when you press enter, when you press a modifier key, and when you press a key that's not enter. Those ones are covered. As a sanity check, I can run the test coverage stuff again, but I feel pretty confident that it is sound. If it doesn't work, then our CI integration, which Travis CI, should be able to catch it, and then it'll become very public when I make the pull request that something is wrong. Okay. Oh, next thing is I have to update the documentation. We have a README for all of the components that we built inside of HSDS React that contains, at bare minimum, a basic example of how you're supposed to use a thing, some description of it, and also all the properties that's available for that particular component. These are manually done. There are tools out there that kind of automate this process for you, but that involves setting things up, and we already have all this stuff written. It's fine. It works. It's not a big problem. Doesn't need to be refactored at this very moment. On enter down, it does a function. This is so hard to read. Excuse me, I'm going to zoom out for a bit. Okay. Oh, Jesus. Okay. Call back. Oh my gosh. Okay, it's fine. Call back when enter is pressed down. Same thing. On enter up. Call back when enter is pressed up. Okay, saved. It should prettify this thing for me, which is nice. The only kind of refactor I'm going to do right now is I'm going to change all these bools to Boolean. I'm going to change all these functions to have a capital F. There we go. So the reason for that kind of discrepancy is when I originally wrote these docs, they were following the prop types convention. So prop types is a thing that used to ship with React, no longer. They stopped supporting it after React 16. And you would declare, you basically have front-end typing, similar to Flow or TypeScript, but it fires a function that's shipped as part of your code base. And for Booleans, instead of using Boolean, they would have .bool, and I just kind of replicated these docs to kind of reflect the API that prop types gives you. So now I just changed it so now it reflects TypeScript because that's the thing we're using. Great. I've updated the docs, I've written the test, I've written the storybook, and now I've written the code. Last thing to do is to make my commit. Great. So these are the files that I've updated, makes sense to me, and I am going to do a handy thing. So when I check the updates that I made, I do it all in the command line. I do git add -p. -p is very, very cool. It basically walks you through your changes file by file, and you can do approval at a very granular level. So here I see these are all the updates that I made inside of props of input because I did alphabetizing. You can also split this into smaller chunks. So these are all the commands you can run at the very bottom. I've only done a handful of them. I don't know what they all mean. But S is split. So now I can see, all right, let me just take a look at this. That is probably fine because I moved it. Yes, I approve. It moves there. Okay, approved, approved, approved. Yes, 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 yes. Here we go. On, enter, up and down. Good. Key up. Yes, I do need this because I intercepted it, right? On wheel, it is moved, great. Seamless, it is moved, great. And some of these guys are moved, great. Cool. Handle, on, enter, down. We added this brand new line of code, correct? Enter up, we do the enter check, and then we fire the enter up, and we also fire the on key up callback, great. We organize some props within the render method here, alphabetize some stuff, looks fine to me. And here we are defining the properties to spread into the native HTML input or text area. On key down, on key up, handles, good. Now these are our tests. Typically, I'm not as fine-grained in checking with the tests. I mean, I will look through it, but for me, it's like the tests read fine. They were able to pass through jest, so it should be okay. Great. These are updates to documentation. We named things, bools, and then we added, oh, it's not here yet. We added on enter down, on enter up. Key presses right. Okay, great. Great. This is update to the storybook. I added actions, so that fires. Great. Cool. So now we have these files. This is what I do for my git commits. I'm going to commit all this. And I have one single, so for this one, I could have split these git commits into several chunks, I guess. But for HSDS React, we merge every single PR, everything gets squashed down to a single commit anyway. And I like this particular process where I am very, very descriptive of my git commit, and I'll show you why. So we have the input, add on enter down and on enter up. And in the description, I do this update adds 2 new callback functions to input, on enter down and on enter up. These functions fire before the default on key down and on key up, on key down and on key up callback functions that are passed to the input component. All right. I think that's basically as descriptive as I need to be. I think it's fine. So here's where the magic happens. I have a handy dandy CLI tool that I built called Groovy. So if I type in Groovy or GV, it has a bunch of commands that I can do. New is the one I'm going to show you guys. So new. Oh, I didn't write documentation for it. It's fine. So if I do GV new PR, it's going to ask me if I want to attach a Trello card to this. I don't have one, so no. So what that does is that it automatically pushes to GitHub for me. It'll open up the PR page, which looks good to me. Oh, excuse me. I am not signed into GitHub on this particular browser. I'm going to change that to my Help Scout one. Yay! Great. Let's try that again. Except this time with a proper demonstration so I can, hopefully things don't break. All right, let's try that again. New PR, no. Pushing to remote. Just gonna open this up. Great. I'm gonna create a pull request and look, my GitHub title and description are automatically there. So I can just copy and paste that title down, assign some reviewers. Who's a good one? Brett. Tinker Train. Yeah, Juan Pablo. He's a great reviewer for this kind of stuff. And this is an enhancement to the input component. This should be a patch bump. And just like that, with a single command, I have created my PR. Perfect. So the things that are going to run are Travis to run through all the tests to make sure everything is good, and also a Netlify deploy preview. This is very handy for people who want to QA this thing. I guess I can. So this is a process where, this is the point in the process where if you've done something that influences a UI in a particular way, it would be a good idea to tag a QA person or a design person to check to make sure your work is good. However, because these changes are so low level component JavaScript API kind of stuff, I think it's okay to not include the UI person, the QA person, and to just include a JavaScript person for the code review. So here I've tagged Juan Pablo. Hopefully he'll have fun with this one. And that's it for this particular live stream, where I've added 2 new callback functions to HSDS React, specifically the input component where you can tap into onEnterUp and onEnterDown. And hopefully you found this helpful. Hope you have a great day. Take it easy. Bye. How do I stop the stream? Stopping stream.